know what to do when you get them and be ready for warnings. I want to talk about that. Right now, at the moment, we've got the current radar overlaid on top of where the risk area is. A lot of these thunderstorms will come in through the afternoon into the evening. We have a couple this morning that we've been keeping an eye on, and the rain itself has been problematic. We're watching that move through parts of the Northeast right now, earlier today causing some delays at airports like New York City's LaGuardia. We see rain coming in through Connecticut, the eastern end of Long Island. Not a lot in the way of thunder and lightning there, so mainly just making the roads wet for your drive this morning. We also have a few thunderstorms, not severe, moving through southwestern Pennsylvania and now coming into western Maryland as well. Again, lightning and thunder at the moment, not severe. We've got the rain out there, again, Punxsutawney down to Morgantown here, watching into Ohio, Cleveland. We've got rain for you, a rainy day. And thunderstorms, though, these are the ones that actually have been a little feisty this morning that extend back here into Arkansas. So at the moment, we're keeping an eye on storms that are approaching Little Rock. We've got thunderstorms out there south of Tulsa, right along I-40 and just south of that, talking about Fort Smith for you. Some of these could have some strong gusty winds. There were some warnings earlier. At the moment, there are none active. But we're going to keep an eye on these storms anyway because they've had that potential. They have been on the stronger side already today. Watching for storms out there this morning, that is really going to evolve as we get into the afternoon. And, Greg, we think all the ingredients are there to give us some pretty intense storms.
Jen, you're right. And you know what? We're going to be affected by it.
Yeah, and we're going to be dealing with it through the afternoon. It may come in multiple rounds, too, which is why I want to time things out for everyone and show you what you can expect here today. In terms of your timing, we're going to be watching for thunderstorms come into Baltimore and D.C. We talked about that here. In terms of the timing, though, I think the afternoon into evening is going to be when we really see the activity. So this morning, you're fine, but we've got all the threats, the strong, damaging winds here. We're right in the heart of that. And damaging winds can be just as damaging and dangerous as tornadoes. So take these warnings very seriously. When you get a severe thunderstorm warning for the severe winds today, you want to make sure you do this ahead of time, securing any loose items outside, your chairs, etc. Staying umbrellas, make sure they're down on your back porch, right? Stay away from trees and power lines and go to the lowest level of your house, away from windows if you do get under a warning, because we do think these winds are going to be very intense. So let's take a look and time things out for you. We've got the forecast here and the current conditions with the forecast coming in. So starting off this morning, doing fine. It's warm, it's humid. Thunderstorms start building by the later afternoon. This is 4 o'clock. You'll see some big storms. The sky will look very dark off to the west. Storms coming in, Leesburg, Frederick, coming into Baltimore and D.C. as we get into about 6 o'clock or so, coming through with, again, that damaging wind potential. And we will be looking for, of course, the isolated risk of tornadoes, along with hail's a possibility as well, too. And heavy rain. Don't want to discount that. It could come down pretty quick. All right, Philadelphia, we've got a 3 on the Torcon for today. So there is a chance we could get some rotating thunderstorms. Let's take a look at what's going to happen here. When you have a 3 on the Torcon, it means severe thunderstorms are likely, a few tornadoes are possible, and tornado watches could be issued. When a watch is issued, whether it's a tornado watch or a severe thunderstorm watch, that means conditions are ripe for storms to form. You have usually a couple of hours that you're going to start to see those storms really develop. So at that point, you need to be ready to get your warnings and then know where you would go if a warning is issued. And we're going to be watching for that, especially in the afternoon. There'll be a few showers earlier today. These are not the ones we're as concerned about. It comes in late afternoon into the evening. These are the ones that really have the most energy to work with. And we will see that coming in about 8, 9 o'clock or so into Philadelphia, wrapping up soon after that. So that's what's happening in a couple cities in the Northeast. I'll take you to some southern cities coming up as well. But, Greg, the winds in the South could really be a big factor.
Yeah,
places like Raleigh, we want to talk about how things will change through the day today, what you'll be feeling out there. We're going to watch out for that possibility of severe storms tonight. And rain is going to help cool things off, perhaps. It's been a little warm and steamy. But Raleigh's below average for rain this time of year. You will have to watch out for the threat for severe, and that's what we are concerned about here. Rain is a good thing until it brings strong, damaging winds that, take down maybe some tree limbs in your backyard. That's a concern we have. We have a couple of sprinkles out there early on. Not really the story that we're talking about. It's about the main event coming in later today. Very likely that we will get into strong, damaging winds. Looking at the Triangle area, back towards Chapel Hill, Greensboro, back towards Charlotte as well. So we are looking at a significant wind threat, especially because of those strong jet stream winds that Greg talked about coming in at the mid to upper levels. When we time that out and bring everything into the region, we're talking about 4, 5, 6 o'clock or so, moving in from west to east through the area, watching for thunderstorms to again bring that strong, damaging wind threat. By about midnight or 1 a.m., everything is through. You'll sleep much better after this because you won't won't have that risk. But hopefully you don't have any damage from the storms when they come through themselves. Let's look at Knoxville and into East Tennessee. We take you over to western North Carolina, like around Asheville. Not only do we have a strong wind threat, we also have a tornado risk at 3 on the Torcon in Asheville. It's a 4 just to the north of here. So there may be some rotation along this line of thunderstorms. Got to watch out for that. Storms coming in about 2 or 3 o'clock or so around Knoxville. You'll see that line continuing to move east Asheville for you. It's just an hour or two later. There may be another chance of getting into thunderstorms here in the south. We're going to be watching for a minute to get that front through and get some improvement in the atmosphere. But we will be watching for all improved by about 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. And again, everything moving through at that time. And then one last stop here. I'll take you into Chattanooga and northern Georgia, northern Alabama. Very likely that we'll see strong damaging winds for you into Chattanooga, Huntsville. We've got that risk as well. Let's look at the timing. Again, the showers come in by afternoon. This is about 1 or 2 o'clock. That's when we start to get into these storms, and we'll be watching for a couple of chances coming in through at least early evening, and then we'll see improved weather after that. All right, Greg. The other story, and I mentioned this, is the heat. Because outside of these storms, we've got a lot of heat here in parts of the south.
Yeah.
Me too. It is August.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yes. And
I forgot, actually.
The East Pack has gotten pretty busy all of a sudden.
Yeah, it has. And we have a very potent hurricane out there. That is Hurricane Dora. Look at this thing. Isn't that kind of beautiful to look at? But thankfully, it's not impacting anybody.
It's away from land. It's well south of the Hawaiian Islands. I suppose it might send some surf up there. It's going to continue in that trajectory again south of the islands. 140 miles per hour. Cat 4.
$140. How about that? And you see Hilo at the top of the screen.
Yeah.
The good news here, sliding way to the south.
All right.
Cross your fingers, we're all
sliding in from the west. That could have a big impact on plans in the central U.S. this week. Check out how they whipped through Draper, Utah on Thursday. Take a look at this rain. You can hear it, too. We had 60-mile-per-hour wind and quarter-size hail that was reported at the time. Visibility is very tough. You can see the trees bending. The person who shot this video says their basement and storage rooms were flooded. Those are the kind of storms we hope we don't get, right? Well, Colorado was also blasted by severe weather over the weekend. Hail pounding a neighborhood in Centennial and piling up in yards. Also, you can see that out there in Colorado Springs. We had a funnel cloud that was spotted forming out of some very ominous and dark clouds. Look at this out here. Now, we've got more on this. Dr. Postel has a look at what is driving the severe threats to start this week, starting in the plains, Greg.
Yeah, Jen, let's
take a look at elsewhere where we could see some problems for travelers. This morning, it's all about what's coming in from Arkansas to Tennessee, affecting your morning drive. This is in western Tennessee. Shelby-Tipton County includes the town of Millington. You're right in the middle of this storm right here. This could have winds in excess of 60 miles per hour. It's moving fast, too, at about 45. So we're keeping an eye on that little extent of the storms. That down there is the energy, which is going to really help make a lot of our afternoon thunderstorm activity just flourish, and that's going to affect air travel. Already looking ahead to where there might be delays later today. The FAA puts out notes every day. They're saying, oh, it's going to be about 2 or 3 o'clock. We'll probably get into a ground stop or ground delay program in the Northeast. We're talking about New York, all the airports there. Got to keep an eye soon after that in places like Philly. Just really watching the storms as they progress in the airspace. At the moment, we're not seeing any delays out there, but we think that is going to change. We'll keep an eye on those cancellations as well as delays for today. It's been a busy one here already, looking ahead. And to me, I've not seen an outlook like this in August. It's not typical. Typically we might maybe have a derecho threat to a little farther north, or just like a big wide-scale front coming in ahead of it, unstable conditions.
This is a cold front that is once again going to bring relatively cool conditions to the Great Lakes and Northeast that we've seen a lot of this year so far this summer. But it is going to carry with it today all those ingredients and line them up in a way to support that severe weather chance, much like we see cold fronts moving in the spring, right? We talked about.
Right. So this is not your typical day when it comes to planning for travel. There's going to be a lot of impacts. Let's talk about that. We've got travel along the east south. So I want to take you into the parts of the south where we're going to see the risk of storms here. All hazards are at play: severe winds, tornadoes, and hail. When it comes to tornadoes, there's a 4 on the Torcon extending through eastern Kentucky into western Virginia, even down into Tennessee, a 3 down all the way into northern parts of Georgia. And then there's that damaging wind threat, which we have extending through this area area as well. So first of all, the storm that we're watching right now, this one it's moving east of Millington at the moment, just north of Memphis. That may have winds in excess of 60. It's possible the storms we get later today may have a wind threat even greater than that, just because of the wind energy that's in the atmosphere. We already see the instability building, and we will see that even more across the south. We have more heating going on. The temperatures are going to be hot. So that sun that you see out there today before the storms come in, that is going to be destructive sunshine, as we call it, because it is going to help increase the instability, and that playing in with the wind energy here is going to give us that risk of thunderstorms going severe. We have that as we get through the afternoon, later afternoon, early evening. It's a time frame for you. And then after, the storms go through, this is about midnight. You can see we're in the all clear, and we'll get some improving weather after that.
Over the next couple of days. So be very careful about that. But let's talk about the heat and let's stay with it, because in New Orleans, you talked about the high temperature today being 100 degrees. It's humid already along the Gulf Coast.
It's not like we're losing that. It's not,
Right.
It's not desert heat.
It is not. And this is very different. When you have a 100-degree temperature with a dew point of 75, the heat index is off the charts, and we're going to continue with it all week long.
It's a really hot week. We have a ridge, and we've had a lot of ridges this summer, of course. It's summertime, you get them. But this one is strong and squat. Strong and squat.
Strong as it's like compressed,
yes,
right? It doesn't extend very far north, but where it does impact us, it is bringing significant heat. Look at these high numbers from Texas all the way into Jacksonville, 99 degrees. In August, that's very uncommon. Typically, we have thunderstorms and a sea breeze. Not today.
Yeah, so the ridge, big part in that. And then when you factor in the fact that it's still humid, we haven't lost that, that drives the heat index up. So in a place like Houston, it goes up to feel like 110, 111 for hours.
That is a remarkable value. And if you look at some of the sort of scaling here, the threat levels, 111 is a dangerous condition. You can get heat cramps or heat stroke very, very quickly. And there are going to be some places that have heat index values even above that into the danger zone, no doubt.
No, seriously, take it serious, because the heat can be deadly.
Right. If the heat doesn't slow you down, as we mentioned, so, it's going to be one of those things where you need to keep in mind, look at your airport delays before you even think about going to the airport, because there may be some.
Yes, and take the earliest flight you can. I mean, if you have the option. Although flights are booked these days, well, certainly on a Monday. But we're going to be watching for delays. Earlier it was in the Northeast. Those have been lifted for now. But then we think by the afternoon, we're likely to get into ground stops and ground delay programs. And that's really going to cause some issues.
That's a really good point, because right now we're looking pretty good. These green circles mean there's really not much of delay at all. But we do expect that later on today over a wide region with a lot of thunderstorm activity coming in.
There are delays already posted for today. Nationally, we have 1,388. That number is going to be much higher.
Much higher, yeah.
And even there may be some cancellations. I mean, there may be a lot of long delays, though. I think that's the kind of day we're looking at.
Yeah, with the severe weather outlook issued by the Storm Prediction Center, big storms later on this afternoon. All hazards, when we say that, we mean damaging straight line winds and also the possibility of a couple of tornadoes. But either way, flash flooding and the potential to disrupt your travel plans exists.
Yeah. Well, there's some light at the end of the times they plan a tour just around getting from lighthouse to lighthouse. And I think Michigan is the state with the most lighthouses. So more than Florida, believe it or not. Let's look at that forecast for you today, whether you're going to do a visit to a lighthouse or maybe hit some of the beaches. We have a couple of areas of concern with the rip current risk up here. So we've got parts of Lake Huron, maybe up around Alpena and just south of there. And then also looking on Lake Michigan from Chicago over towards Grand Rapids, a high risk of the rip currents for today. And plus, there's some beach hazard statements that have been issued for the big waves that we're going to have out there, and some dangerous swimming conditions, includes the rip current risk as well. And honestly, it's not that hot either. So you might not be thinking beach day at the moment. Maybe it's more of a hiking day or enjoying some of the lighthouses. Let's go to Sleeping Bear Dunes in Michigan. Temps are going to be only in the upper 70s. A really pretty day, actually, if you do want to do some walking or hiking up here. Grand Haven, Michigan will be hitting 79 degrees. That wind is going to be from the north-northeast for you. And then we jump down to North Ave Beach into the Chicago area, 76 degrees. And we are going to find those water temperatures chilly. 58. That's another part of the story, too. With 58 degrees, the water temperature can change really rapidly, actually, across this area, just depending on the wind direction and if you have any upwelling, etc. So right now we're dealing with that cool snap with those water temperatures. So, Greg, this is a stay on the shore kind of day, if you ask me.
I prefer my water to have Oh, man, a squall line with damaging straight line winds.
Yeah.
And embedded within that, some tornadoes as well.
Yeah, it's possible. Rotation along the line.
Yeah.
The line itself could bring the strong winds. I think we'll have a lot of shelf clouds today.
I think you're right.
We've already
We're going to have some video tomorrow to look at.
Yes, I think so here. Hopefully you're all safe. I'm going to take you through some timing of everything and talk about the south part of all of this. We've got one storm that we're watching right now that's crossing West Tennessee. It went through Memphis. It's kind of back building a little bit in terms of where the severe is. And so Millington, you're in your second warning of the day at the moment, just north of Memphis. Reynolds Wolf is there. He sent me some pictures. The shelf cloud that you guys have this morning is just amazing. But that's not the main event, believe it or not. This whole zone through Georgia, Alabama, and into the central Appalachians. That's really going to be the area that we see much more prolific thunderstorm activity. But this storm, though, we've got to keep an eye on here. It may be bringing some strong winds, the possibility for 60-mile-per-hour winds as it moves to the east at 45 miles per hour. Again, multiple storms. There's two now back-to-back in that area. Do you notice how that's right on the edge of the instability? You see how that's kind of building up right there? So that storm is tapping into that. Lots of instability building through Alabama, in through Tennessee. So we expect as storms move into that area and develop through the next several hours, then we're going to be watching for more intense storms developing. You see that by about 2 or 3 o'clock or so. That's really when everything starts to come together. Storms through Knoxville, Chattanooga, Huntsville, the possibility of going severe. We'll see that moving and racing east through this evening. Charlotte, Raleigh, the Triangle area, Chapel Hill, we're talking about you as well, all heading eastbound as we get through tonight. And we lose some of the instability by this evening, but we may still have enough in terms of atmospheric ingredients to give you some strong storms through eastern North Carolina. I think from north to south, we'll see it today.
Yeah. And you know what? I did go out chasing yesterday. I put a little anemometer gadget on top of my car, and I drove around the neighborhood to find some exposed areas I could get some wind, and I got 12 knots.
Oh, well, not a lot there. But elsewhere, we did have some pretty severe weather. And
we did.
We want to take you through all of it. Thank you so much for being here and choosing America's Morning Headquarters to get you through the mid-morning hours and today's threat. We had storms yesterday in the Midwest. We're taking you to some of those scenes across the area. Some pretty severe damage from these storms.
Yeah, these winds are not 12 knots. These are much stronger than that, obviously, with the thunderstorms that moved across the Midwest. People are now kind of waking up to how much damage those storms did. And the top of this building collapsed in overnight storms in southern Indiana near French Lake.
Yeah, so we're concerned as these storms push east and new storms develop, the threat will increase. The Torcon at the greatest today here, watching cities like Baltimore and Washington. Keep an eye on Roanoke. We've got 4 on the Torcon.
That's significant. I mean, there is a tornado threat, and I think we're going to have a squall line moving through later on today. And embedded in that squall line are maybe some tornadic thunderstorms as well. So it's going to be a complex scenario. The big deal, clearly, is this.
Let's keep an eye on the timing of everything. We have a couple of thunderstorms right now, and I'll show you those in a moment. We've got the current radar overlaid on top of the risk areas. Now, across the high plains, we'll get to that. That's going to be much later today. This zone up here to the north has had a few showers, even a few thunderstorms early today, but that's not the main event. Even this, a couple of thunderstorms now forming right here in West Tennessee at potential severe limits. But again, the main event comes later today in that area that's highlighted there to the east. Now, these thunderstorms have certainly packed a punch north of Memphis this morning. They have been prolific lightning producers. They've had that risk of winds maybe in excess of 60 miles per hour. They brought the shelf cloud as well, so you've been seeing that view this morning out there. Definitely looks ominous. Fort Smith, it's south of you that these thunderstorms are kind of moving along. Little Rock, thunderstorms right overhead right now, not at a severe risk, but the lightning is the main risk that you're seeing at the moment. Then we jump back to Memphis, and it's north of town that we've had this parade of storms coming in. For parts of Shelby and Tipton County, again, Millington, again, you're under the severe thunderstorm warning. This goes until 9:15 local time, winds in excess of 60. They're moving east at about 45 miles per hour. And then that first storm that came north of Memphis through Millington, that's on the move still, and that now includes a warning for Chester, Hardman, and McNairy counties, portions of them, including around Selmer and Henderson. This goes until 9:30, and that extends outside of the warned area, but does extend up to I-40 right around Jackson in Tennessee. Those storms we'll watch now. Later today, we're going to keep an eye for those kinds of storms that may be even more intense here into the Northeast. It's just plain old rain at the moment, and rain coming down across central Mass, Hartford, Connecticut, West Haven, New Haven. We do have rain out there more than it is thunderstorms, and a couple of thunderstorms, some in central Pennsylvania near State College and back into western Maryland. But this is an area that later on today we're going to see much more active conditions as we get the more supercell kind of thunderstorms, or maybe even a line of storms coming in, Greg. All the ingredients are coming together here.
Jen, you're exactly. Not many of us are going to be able to escape it.
I know. Everyone gets something.
Yep.
What do you think about storm motions? Moving pretty quick?
I think so, moving quickly. And actually, the storm motions can be very important for determining which storms are going to have that tornado threat with them. Because if they deviate a little bit from the front, then they could acquire a bit more rotation and give us that tornado threat.
Get out on their own a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll watch for that. I mean, that's tough to forecast ahead of time. You kind of have to treat that as a nowcast situation. Once storms start developing, you watch that on the radar, which we'll be doing throughout the day here on the Weather Channel into the evening. But I'm going to take you into the timing and talk about the storm threat in places like D.C. So we're zooming in to the threat for damaging winds. This is where we're expecting winds in excess of 60, 70 plus miles per hour. That hatched area, the most intense risk, and that includes Baltimore, D.C., back to Frederick, Maryland, Leesburg, Virginia. We were going to watch for these winds increasing when the thunderstorms come in, so it's going to be associated with the storms. So make sure you're ready before they get here. They will be moving fast into the area, so you might not have a lot of time once things start getting bad. Secure loose items outside. Make sure your patio umbrella is down. You don't want that to go flying today. Stay away from trees and power lines, and if you can, keep your car away from them as well. Going to the lowest level of your house away from windows when a severe thunderstorm warning is issued, because there is going to be that concern for the very intense winds. And if you're driving, the best thing to do is pull over to a safe area. You know, I know it's always hard to know what to do when you're driving. If you have the opportunity to avoid it, great. And if you do have to be driving, just when the storms hit, make sure you are being safe and pulling over if you can. Now, let's look at the timing. A lot of people, I think, will be driving. This is 4 o'clock. Thunderstorms now coming in, Frederick, Leesburg, then tracking east, again, moving fast. So we'll get those storms over towards Baltimore and D.C. just an hour or two later. With that, we'll have the leading edge bringing the risk. That's where we'll have the strong damaging wind potential, the tornado risk, if there is any spin-ups along the line. And then behind it, you'll get into some rainfall, and then it moves through. And by 10 o'clock, you can see we're already in the all clear. We'll look at some other cities here coming up here, also take you into the south. But, you know, Greg, let's look at where storms are already firing up right now. Yeah, and I want to take you into the timing for some of those cities in the south that Greg was just talking about. So, you know, here in the virtual view of Raleigh, we're going to be watching out for the possibility of severe storms coming in overnight. Rain will help cool things down. We've got the heat, for one thing, before it gets there. And plus, we are a little below average for rain. We just don't want it to come with severe weather. We do have to watch out for that risk, and I want to take you into the forecast here across the zone. All threats, including damaging winds, and there is an isolated tornado risk as well. We'll keep an eye on that into the south. So starting off with Greensboro and Durham, Raleigh, the whole triangle area, we're going to be looking at changing conditions through the day today. First of all, it's warm and humid this morning. Then it gets hot, and then we see thunderstorms come in here, and those clouds will be developing. You'll have a lot of vertical development to your cumulus clouds pretty quickly this afternoon. Thunderstorms are likely to bring strong damaging winds, and that includes a big chunk of the Piedmont back into western North Carolina. We're going to be watching for storms to come in about mid-afternoon-ish here. This is about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. You see that come crashing in as a line of thunderstorms makes its way along that line. The leading edge will bring that damaging wind threat. We'll have to keep an eye for any rotation along that line as well, and there'll be the heavy rain concern as well. Oh, and not to mention the lightning. You know, I know kids are back in school. We've got, you know, kids going after school sports. This may be disruptive to that. Let's look at Knoxville and Asheville. So we go from East Tennessee to the mountains of western North Carolina. We've got a 4 and a 3 on the Torcon across this area. So there is a tornado risk. Thunderstorms for you start a little bit earlier than we were talking about in Raleigh. We're talking about 1 or 2 o'clock or so, 3 o'clock making their way through Gatlinburg. These are the kind of storms that you don't want to get caught hiking in. So today, today. Early, maybe hikes, but you want to come down, well before this is going to threaten. Asheville, we've got storms coming in for you about 4 or 5 o'clock, continuing through this evening. And we may get multiple chances of storms here. And then one last stop, Chattanooga and Huntsville. We're talking about parts of East Tennessee here in northern Georgia and then into northern Alabama. Our thunderstorms come in earlier. Things are going to start maybe about 11 or 12 o'clock. The real nasty stuff comes in about 1 or 2 o'clock. And again, all hazards are there for that risk of severe weather. Now, Greg, it's interesting that these spots will be hot before the storms come in, but just south of here, it gets super hot and there's nothing to break the heat.
That's right. We're not going to have the storms.
Yes, by the way. So typically the time things start to ramp up. Atlantic, good for now. Pacific, busy.
Pacific is busy, and we've got some big-time activity there. But if you go ahead and look at what's going on in the Atlantic side, I kind of want to focus on this a little bit differently. We have some clusters of thunderstorms out here in the Atlantic. None of these are really ripe, I don't think, for development, but we've got to keep watching them. Even though they're contending with Saharan dust and a lot of stable air in the region, the islands, eastern islands of the Caribbean, we could have some squally weather with some of those systems moving through.
Yeah, it is August.
It is.
We'll keep an eye on it. Storms sliding in from the west. Look at these. These are the kind of storms that could have a big impact on plans in the central U.S. this week. Check out how they whipped through Draper, Utah on Thursday. Look at this, 60-mile-per-hour winds. We had quarter-size hail reported as well at the time. And the person who shot this video says their basement and their storage rooms were flooded. And that's from the heavy rainfall. Just look at how the wind is blowing the trees and blowing the rain around. Colorado also blasted by severe weather over the weekend. We had hail pounding a neighborhood in Centennial and piling up in yards. Looks like snow out there, doesn't it? Well, we also had in Colorado Springs a funnel cloud that was spotted forming out of some very ominous and dark clouds. You can see those clouds stretching across the entire horizon. Dr. Postel has a look at what is driving the severe threats to start this week. And we'll talk about the plains right now, Greg.
Yeah, Jen, we are, because it's not...
I think we're going to see scenes like that again. We've seen that very scene this morning, actually. Memphis. Reynolds Wolf is in Memphis. He shared a view from Memphis of the shelf cloud that came through. And you can see now we've got those two storms leaving the Memphis area, but they are tracking east. And with that, we've got severe thunderstorm warnings. Chester, Hardman, and McNairy counties under severe thunderstorm warning until 9:30. You're probably seeing that shelfie on the leading edge of that. And you may see winds in excess of 60 miles per hour. Both those storms kind of back to back rolling on through. Some thunderstorms do extend at this time back into Arkansas, including around Little Rock, although they're not at severe risks. There may be some lightning delays at the airport. Of course, you don't want to have the folks out there on the tarmac working when there's all that lightning. So that's going to be one concern we have at all of the airports today. And then, of course, the thunderstorms, as they come in, the ones that are really severe, the big ones here, can really wreak havoc on keeping flights on time. I think we'll have ground stops. We'll probably have ground delay programs. Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, even Florida airports could see some delays today. So let's take a look at where we're at right now with delays. We've had 1,686 delays so far, about 500 flights canceled. I think through the day, that delay number is really going to ramp up. Will there be cancellations? Potentially, but not definitely here. But this certainly is a delay kind of day, considering what's coming your way. On the roads, too. So timing is everything, knowing that it's going to be afternoon into the evening, that these storms will be going through, traveling, whether it's 65 or 85 or I-20. If you can go earlier, the better. Fine this morning. It'll be hot, especially by about lunchtime today. Things heating up out there. But the big storms come in into the afternoon and will cause delays. Now add severe concerns. And that's just left the Memphis area. It's moving through West Tennessee. So there's going to be much more of that later today.
Yeah, indeed. And I think very many of us along the Northeast I-95 corridor especially are going to be dealing with significant weather, including damaging straight line winds, maybe 70, 80 miles per hour in some of the strong storms.
Yeah. This is going to be sort of next level kind of thunderstorms. Yeah. This is an outlook that we see in the springtime more than in August.
It feels like it's a spring-like event, right? Where we've got so much activity aloft that reminds us that it's a spring-like event. It kind of is in the Northeast. But when you bring that with the August heat and the instability, you combine the two, you get problems.
We get spring-like wind energy in the jet stream and summertime heat coming together. It's already been stormy this morning, and I mentioned Memphis. And so I want to look at that, where we could see the risk of not just damaging winds, but there's also a tornado risk. 4 on the Torcon down through Kentucky and parts of even Tennessee. A 3 beyond that. Knoxville, Chattanooga, Greenville, and South Carolina and Asheville, all under a 3 today. So storms may rotate. There may be some tornado warnings that you have to know where to go. Damaging winds, the main threat here as well, though. And you can see how that threat does extend all the way down into the deep south. Another look at that storm that left the Memphis area is now moving east. We've got two of them lined up, two cells back to back. This one in Fayette County through 9:45 is severe thunderstorm warning. Winds in excess of 60 on that one, as well as this one just to the east of that, the leading thunderstorm that includes parts of Chester, Hardin, and McNairy County. This goes until 10:15 local time. So both of these cells have been bringing a storm threat here for quite some time, actually, as they've been moving all across West Tennessee. These are tapping into all of the instability that has really increased dramatically in just the last hour. That happens as the day heats up and you get that daytime heating, the air starts rising and bubbling up. We will see that instability pretty high through the south because it is going to be very hot before the storms come crashing in, and with that, bringing the risk for severe weather. Part of like your daily routine, just always check the back seat.
Let's also now have a look at the forecast for like southern Louisiana, New Orleans in particular, with a high temperature today of 100. We know the dew point is going to be in the 70s. Heat index will be way over 100 degrees, but it lasts again throughout much of this upcoming week. So the heat will not quit in this part of the country.
Heat advisories, we've got excessive heat warnings that are in effect here. That's a bright pink all through the deep south. And it's so interesting how this is just on the southern edge of where the thunderstorms are. So we've got a big ridge. It's just really squat.
And that's so true. And you don't get those big thunderstorms in the middle of these heat waves.
Right. They're on the northern edge.
Right. We've talked about that a lot. The big storms happen on the edge of the heat waves. And here's where the heat is. The storms are farther to the north, but where the hot temperatures are, it is going to be deadly hot.
And nothing to break the heat. So it will have sunshine, temperature, and maybe there's a few clouds, but they'll do nothing really to quell the heat, especially when you combine the temperature and the dew point, and you get heat indices up near 110 or even higher.
It is remarkable. And if you look at the scale for like what kind of danger the heat index provides, we're in this zone right in here throughout much of the southern U.S. And that means that you can get heat stroke very quickly in this kind of weather.
Yeah, especially in the south where kids are back at school, practices are going on here, just making sure everyone has time to get the water breaks, get some shade here and cool down here. This is a dangerous heat that we're dealing with.
It is. And if the heat doesn't slow you down, the storms on
Piling of water on the roadways, that's not good for driving, definitely not good for air travel. Kind of storms that we're thinking probably about 50, maybe 60,000 feet in the sky building up.
They'll be really tall. So
Yeah.
the air traffic control is going to be really skillful today at getting us around those storms, because it's going to be very difficult to fly over them. We're going to have to find weaknesses in that line or go around them completely.
And that's going to mean there'll be some ground stops or ground delay programs once the storms get going. This rain right now, while it did cause some delays earlier this morning at LaGuardia, this is not really a problem when it comes to air travel. There's no lightning with most of this.
Right. And I think that's going to be the area that we're eventually going to see most of the delays. That's why we have this shaded. That's kind of a forecast. The middle of the country, the delays won't be so significant.
Okay, now this number keeps going up. If you've been watching all morning, we started just above 1,000. Now we're at 1844 with delayed flights. That once we get to the afternoon, this number will be top of the charts.
Yeah, it will be. And this is sort of the bullet point look at it. We have thunderstorms later on this afternoon developing, all hazards, meaning some strong winds and even a couple of tornadoes possible.
Yeah, so make sure that you know where you'd go if you're driving.
Right. And there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
So that's a good way to maybe put a vacation theme together. Michigan has a lot of lighthouses. If you are planning on traveling there today, thinking about swimming, think again. We got a number of areas with high rip current risk along the shores of Lake Huron, up here on the east side of Michigan, up towards Alpena and just south of there, and also on the shores of Lake Michigan, stretching from Grand Rapids in Michigan all the way around, actually all the way around to the Wisconsin side as well. A lot of beach hazard statements have been issued for today, not just because of the rip currents, but also because of the big waves that we may see out there. Water temperatures are on the chilly side too, in the south. I'll show you that. So Sleeping Bear Dunes in Michigan, air temperature 78, water temperature 70, not that cool, but we go southbound, and Grand Haven, we're at air temperature 79. Again, we've got this concern for the rip currents. Look at the scene for you around the Chicago area at North Ave Beach. Our water temperature is 57, so that's a little on the chilly side. Wind is going to be gusty today, about 10 to 15 plus miles per hour, so maybe a day to stay on shore. Enjoy. And a beautiful afternoon, actually, 76 degrees. It's not going to be hot out. You might not even want to swim, Greg.
Jen, that's the air file overall, a threat of a couple of tornadoes as well.
Yeah, no, and even maybe in parts of the south. Greg, I'm watching the radar in West Tennessee, and I'm going to call it. This is the start of the storms for today. I think these are no longer the leftover storms.
They're not. You're right.
Yeah.
I think this is the tail end or the southern part of the same front that's going to ignite new storms farther north.
So we'll get right into that. I'll track that storm. I'll tell you where else we're going to be watching for severe weather. But we go right into western Tennessee, and there have been 2 thunderstorms lined up one after another here that have been certainly bringing us some risks of severe weather. We're jumping up into Kentucky as well. Severe thunderstorm warning for Benton, Hardman, and Tippah. And so we've got a number of areas that we're keeping an eye on. Darden down towards Savannah. You can see this area also dealing with the risk of severe weather. Okay. That was in Tennessee. Okay, right in here. So that's for that new area just east of the thunderstorm that we've been tracking. Now, we're going to be watching those thunderstorms that exist right now, but especially new ones that will be forming in the instability. You see how these storms are coming right into this area with very high instability. So the thunderstorm cloud uses that as the energy. It's growing. It's able to grow taller up into the sky. It's able to maintain its strength a little bit longer, which is why these storms have been able to maintain its strength for so long. Let's take a look at how things evolve through the day. This is about 4 o'clock or so, maybe even an hour or two before that. Well, keep an eye on northern Alabama, like around Huntsville, Chattanooga. We've got to watch into western North Carolina, Raleigh. This is about 7 o'clock for you, 8 o'clock or so, Raleigh, in the Triangle area. That storms come crashing in, and again, all modes of severe weather possible.
He's got a lot more.
Did, yeah, just south of us, about 16 miles.
I guess I was the lucky one that didn't get much wind.
I know. You know, today we have a threat for storms that look like that, maybe even more intense in terms of the winds they could create. We've got all risks, including the risk of tornadoes. So this is the Torcon. We've got 2s, 3s, and 4s out there through the mid-Atlantic, the central Appalachians, even into the south.
Yeah, we have the tornado threat along with a lot of thunderstorms, straight line wind potential. Very high numbers are expected, I think, 80 to plus miles per hour. And a lot of people going to be affected by it. It's not like individual storms. There's going to be a squall line moving through along a front later on today.
A big old line of storms. So thank you, everyone, for joining us and choosing America's Morning Headquarters to get you through the mid-morning hours and today's severe threats.
Right. And, you know, the biggest concern, well, the winds. Yes, we have a Torcon today, as Jen was mentioning, across the region. You know, Torcons of 3 and 4 from the big cities in the Northeast into parts of the Midwest. But also the threat for severe weather today is also going to be associated with those stronger winds. Now, the big deal, which is we mentioning
today, because it's been raining. We've had some delays at the airports already in the Northeast, but we've put the current radar and overlaid it on top of the forecast, the outlook for severe weather. So we've got a couple of areas, one across the high plains, a big area here across the east, and a pattern that looks very spring-like when it comes to the winds in the atmosphere and even just the look of this outlook, right? But we've got summer-like air. It's warm, it's humid, and that's going to be feeding into these storms, giving us a lot of ingredients, unfortunately, to potentially bring these strong to severe storms. It's been lightning, the only risk right now in Little Rock and points east of you. Another batch still coming in, so you're not done, and there's even more behind that. So we're going to be seeing a train of thunderstorms coming your way. Memphis, storms are now east of you. A couple of thunderstorm warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings are up for these 2 cells that have been tracking east. It's this main one that keeps on going here. This thing has been holding together for quite a while, and if anything, it's just elongating. This is for parts of Chester, Hardin, and McNairy counties until 10:15 local time, and then it's intended to move east, as you can see, with another warning issued just east of there. Already, we've had winds over 65 miles per hour, I believe that was, come out of that storm. So parts of Lawrence, Lewis, and Wayne counties, you are under a severe thunderstorm warning until 10:30 local time. There is the potential that we may be into a watch. It is this zone right here. This has been outlooked by the Storm Prediction Center. Includes the area that we have a warned storm in right now, but also includes over towards Huntsville and Chattanooga. So a watch is likely, meaning that the threat, we are in that time zone for threats to really start to take off when it comes to storms developing. Tornadoes are possible. So we'll see what kind of watch they put out, if it's a severe thunderstorm or tornado. It may just be tornado, considering the the day that we have. Either way, you've got to be ready for all kinds of warnings. And when there's a warning issued, that's when you need to seek shelter. We've got some rain out there as well in Cleveland. It's just plain old rain in the northeast. A few thunderstorms moving up through northern Pennsylvania. A few more thunderstorms have now popped across southern Ohio, including this cell crossing from Ohio into West Virginia, with it the risk of severe as well. So, Greg, as you mentioned, under this upper low here, we might get some storms that go severe.
Yeah, they're starting to pop up. You're right about that, Jen. Now let's have a look real quick at
It was literally just issued.
Oh, tornado watch?
Yes.
Okay, so do we have that?
As you were, yeah, we do. We're gonna show that. I'm gonna show it first and talk about.
Yeah, let's do that.
The tornado watch here, and there's some cold air loft there too. There's a lot of things to really drive the instability in that area. So not surprising that that's going first as a concern. Let me get right into that. The tornado watch again. This is just issued literally as Greg and I were just talking. This goes until 6 o'clock this evening. This zone that includes parts of Ohio, West Virginia, a lot of Kentucky, including Lexington and London, Kentucky, and I-75 drivers there. It actually extends into southwestern Pennsylvania, including just south of Pittsburgh. This is an area that means conditions are ripe for storms to go. They may be severe. Tornadoes are a threat across this area. So when a watch is issued, it means in the next few hours, we may see some storms that go severe. Have a way to get warnings and know where you would go. And if you're in a warning, then you need to take action. So this is one area that we are watching. Now, again, there's a couple of cells. There's one right now near on the border of Ohio and West Virginia that we're keeping an eye on. There's many more that we need to watch today. So let's get you into your timing for the thunderstorms that we can expect across this area. Thunderstorms with strong damaging winds may actually very well be the main threat that we will see with thunderstorms today. This is a zoomed in look at Baltimore and D.C. in the zone that is very likely for damaging winds in excess of 70, 75, maybe over 80 miles per hour. That kind of wind can do significant damage. So when you get a warning like that, you might actually want to treat it like a tornado warning and make sure that you're getting inside your safe room, interior room, staying away from the windows. Don't have your face, pinned to the glass because you want to watch these storms come in. These will certainly bring the risk of some significant damage. This is about 4 o'clock-ish, maybe 3 or 4, around Frederick, Maryland, Leesburg, Virginia, comes crashing east through Baltimore, down through D.C., Manassas. This is at 6 o'clock. The timing is terrible because this is the time when everyone wants to try to get home from work. We'll be watching for these storms to come through. And then they're through. The leading edge will be that risk of the severe. Behind it will be rain that could be heavy at times, which will bring its own risks. But then after that, the front comes through, and we'll see improved weather. Philadelphia, we've got a 3 on the Torcon today, so along with the threat for damaging winds, we also have that risk for storms that may rotate. At 3 means that there's a chance of some severe thunderstorm warnings. A few tornadoes are possible. Tornado watches may be issued across this area. They're not yet. Usually, a little closer in terms of the timing of when you expect to get the storms. So let's look at Philly. Our timing is later than you're going to see in western Pennsylvania, and even a little bit later than you're going to see in Baltimore and D.C., because now this is 6 o'clock, and you can see the storms are still off to the west. It's going to be maybe about 7 or 8 o'clock that storms come in to Wilmington in Delaware and Philadelphia, and we watch storms moving through New Jersey as well, with all the risks and hazards, including lightning, which will be a risk, along with the heavy rain that comes in as these storms come blasting through. Southeast, Greg, we also have. So let's take a look here at a virtual view of Raleigh, North Carolina. We're going to be watching out for the possibility of thunderstorms here. We start the day out like this, a little hazy, maybe a few clouds, but then things warm up. We're heating up to the 90s, and then the thunderstorms come in. And while that might cool you off, a scene like this, it might seem welcome because we need the rainfall. The problem is it will bring with it the risk and threat of severe damaging winds and even tornadoes. We've got some Torcons here across North Carolina as well. Let's zoom in and talk more about your timing. Starting off your day, temps in the upper 70s. It's humid. It's going to quickly heat up out there. We do see a risk area with very likely to see the damaging winds, Raleigh into points east, but we're very likely back through Chapel Hill and Greensboro and western North Carolina. So heads up today. The storms that we get will bring with them a threat of strong damaging winds, maybe in excess of 70 miles per hour or higher. Watching that come through about 6 or 7 o'clock or so by this evening. We'll watch for the chance here maybe of a second round. We'll see if that second round does bring severe risks, but it's possible as we get into the overnight hours. You don't really get the all clear until the front pushes a little farther into the region. Let's jump back into East Tennessee and western North Carolina. So straight line winds, a big threat. Also a threat for tornadoes. We've got a 3 and 4 on the Torcon across this area. You see that into northern Tennessee up into Kentucky and into western Virginia too, for that matter. But let's look at Knoxville. Our thunderstorms are going to come in earlier. So we're talking now about 11 or 12 o'clock or so. Thunderstorms blast in, bringing with them all of those threats. Asheville making it here by about 2 or 3 o'clock. Gatlinburg, you're right in the middle of it. The Smoky Mountains are right in the middle of it. So Greg, anyone planning outdoor recreation today, hiking, you want to come back inside before lunchtime, before these storms threaten.
Yeah, you do. And we'll give you the heads up, of course, along the way. Jen, thank you very much.
Things we're keeping an eye on in the Pacific, nothing threatening land, thank goodness. The Atlantic doesn't have anything outlooked right now, but it's an interesting wave pattern coming off Africa.
Totally. And, you know, almost like in another environment, you'd see this area of thunderstorm activity over the main development region of the tropics and think, why aren't these areas circled?
Look at that. I mean, my eyes go right to that big blob of thunderstorm activity.
And there's other things there, too, that might sort of say, why aren't these highlighted? It's in part because of the Saharan air layer. The air is very dry. It's very stable. There's some wind shear with it. So whatever's out there on those satellite pictures, models don't seem to like them. It probably won't do much.
Okay. Well, that's good news.
Good news.
Storms sliding in from the west could have a big impact on plans in the central U.S. this week. They'll look like this. I mean, check out this, how they whipped through Draper, Utah on Thursday. 60-mile-per-hour winds and quarter-size hail was reported at the time. The person who shot this video says their basement and storage rooms were flooded. There's trees just bending over in the wind. Well, we're going to see this in the east as well today, by the way. But Colorado, we also were blasted by severe weather over the weekend. This is not snow. This is hail. It was pounding a neighborhood in Centennial and piling up in yards. And also in Colorado Springs, we had a funnel cloud that was spotted out here, forming out of some very ominous and dark clouds. Oh, boy. Look at that right there. So today, scenes like this, perhaps again in the plains. Got to check that out. Dr. Postel has a look at what's driving all of these severe threats to start the week in the plains, Greg.
Yeah, Jen, it's kind of subtle.
Threats out there, all the hazards. So let's get into that, where that cell, the one that was in Memphis, is actually this right here that's moving back to West Tennessee. But we've got 2 tornado watches that have been issued that cover a large area of real estate, including in Tennessee now. So that's the newest one that's just popped up. This one goes until 7 o'clock here in Tennessee. We also have one to the north, which includes parts of Kentucky and West Virginia and even into a little bit of Pennsylvania and Ohio. That one goes until 6 o'clock. So we've got a large area now under the threat for potential storms that may create tornadoes. We've worried about rotating storms. There's a lot happening in the atmosphere. Greg talked about that we've got, this general spin, as you can see here, larger scale. So that may help lead to some smaller scale individual thunderstorm areas of rotation, and that could lead to a tornado threat. It's mainly been a straight line wind threat so far today. That's been the case here. That's that cell, the one I was talking about that left the Memphis area, and that shelf cloud I shared with you. Here it is, still holding together in Lawrence, Lewis, and Wayne counties here, including Mount Pleasant and Lawrenceburg. This is in effect until 10:30 for winds in excess of 60 miles per hour with that cell. Another one over here in parts of Fentress County. This goes until 10:45. Maybe some strong winds that come out of this as well. And we go up to Ohio now, right around Parkersburg. Now, interesting on this one, it's not just for the severe winds. Tornado possible. Be ready to seek shelter.
A heat wave.
Yes. Yeah. It's
right?
a clash of seasons, so to speak. So the atmosphere definitely bringing it all together today, which is why we are going to look at all of the timing and all of the risks and hazards. We have thunderstorms that have begun already this morning, a couple of mornings, and we've got watches lined up from Ohio and Pennsylvania down through Tennessee.
Let's go to Cincinnati. We have a live look there.
To the risk areas for here. We have a tornado watch that has been posted. That's this background red color. This watch in the south goes until 7 o'clock Eastern time. That does include Knoxville and East Tennessee. It includes Asheville Asheville here in North Carolina, down to Chattanooga, Nashville. I mean, so we've got a large area in that risk zone. It's a 3 on the Torcon down here stretching into northern Georgia, a 2 just south of that, and then a 4 to the north, which includes parts of Kentucky and West Virginia, where we've seen a few thunderstorms popping already. This storm bringing with it the threat for some damaging winds. This is a storm that started in Memphis and has been crossing all the way across the state here in Tennessee. This includes Columbia, Franklin, and Spring Hill. It's going to approach I-65. Heads up, there is that risk for some strong winds coming out of this. You don't want to be caught driving in that one. Then we go to another thunderstorm that's going to be crossing over I-75. This is now in East Tennessee, Elk Valley, La Follette, Oneida. You're under this until 12:15. Damaging winds the main threat. Watching this cell track east, and they're all moving fairly fast at about 45 miles per hour-ish, depending on the storm. But to give you a sense of, that kind of timing, storms may actually ramp up in speed, and that means you don't get a lot of lead time necessarily. They may form and they may move fast. So be ready today in this area to get those warnings and take action immediately if you get under a warning. You don't want to be caught in these storms. A lot of instability has already been built up across the zone. That's because it's warm, the sun is hot, and definitely increasing that heating near the ground here right away. The air is rising. That's just fuel for thunderstorms. So these thunderstorms are going to tap into that as we go through the afternoon, keeping an eye on northern Alabama, East Tennessee for a couple of chances of storms, then crossing over through the Piedmont in North Carolina through this evening. The heat check the back seat.
Let's have a look at the forecast now for Louisiana, and in particular in New Orleans. Today, we're forecasting 100 degrees, but the rest of the week, it's going to be hot, upper 90s, about the same. There's no escaping. It feels like this heat wave right along the southern U.S. We're going to be in it till the forecast horizon. We can't really see a break to it.
I know. It's very long lasting. This ridge is so strong that's driving this heat wave. And compared to what we just had earlier at the end of July, it's more squat now. I mean, it's really just confined to parts of the South dealing with it, but it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere, and where it's hot, it's going to stay hot, and it is going to be very hot on the high end of the scale, even by local standards. You could put it that way. High temperatures today, well above 100, mid-90s, even in Atlanta, and when you add the humidity, the heat index is going to be off the charts as well. An extremely dangerous event for us regarding the heat.
Tampa, 109, Miami, 107. I mean, so many spots dealing with it. Once you get into that range above 103, that's in the danger zone. Heat cramps are possible, exhaustion likely, heat exhaustion. Heat stroke is also possible. This is it could be a deadly circumstance.
Indeed. And, if the heat doesn't slow you down, the thunderstorms...
I mean, this morning, things have really ramped up in the last hour.
You can see the thunderstorms are beginning to explode across parts of Kentucky, nearby areas of West Virginia and Ohio. This is just the beginning of a long day ahead, Jen.
You're keeping an eye on this particular cell near Parkersburg. There are 2 warnings here. There's severe thunderstorm warnings. It does include Marietta, Parkersburg, and Vienna. But tornado possible on the tag has me looking at this one a little bit closer. So wanted to inspect where would there be some rotation. It's broad, but maybe in here. And, even looking out in general at the thunderstorm, there might be some areas that spin up quickly.
That tells us there's a lot of wind shear in the atmosphere that these thunderstorms are able to access. So I think any one of these, Jen, to your point, could support the chance of a tornado. We have to watch out for it carefully. We're looking good at the airports now, but we know that's going to change.
It'll change quickly. Once the thunderstorms get more widespread into the Northeast, we're expecting ground stops and ground delay programs. Right. That's going to mean some lengthy delays. We already have now more than 2,249 delays that have been posted.
This number is going to go way up. This is not even the beginning of it all. If you look at it kind of in this bullet point view, thunderstorms are going to be moving through this region later on today. Maybe not in East New England, but farther to the southwest, yes, including big-time new airports like in New York, in Philly, in D.C., everywhere in between. Heads up later on today especially. Yeah,
I mean, you worry about driving on the interstates because they get congested and crowded. People might drive beyond the speed. This kind of rain that we're expecting with this, too, is going to mean you have to slow down.
Yeah, and the road impacts, well, for lunchtime, maybe not so impacted by a lot of thunderstorm activity, but it's coming. It's coming later on this afternoon and evening.
Yeah, that's right. But evening rush home and soon after New York City, get ready. All the delays at the airports and on the roads.
Right. And, there is some like
a lot of clouds out there. Now, we do have some risks at the beaches up across this area, too. Actually, some big waves and some rip currents. There is a high risk of rip currents for you right along the whole south shore of Lake Michigan, the Wisconsin, Illinois, and Michigan beaches there. Also on like Huron, we've got some high risk of rip currents as well, like up around Alpena. We all have the high waves. That's another concern. That's why these beach hazard statements have been posted there and also along the shores of Lake Erie as well. So maybe not the best of days to go in the water, but a beautiful day to be next to the water. And look at Sleeping Bear Dunes, Michigan's forecast, 78 degrees, beautiful. We could jump down to Grand Haven in Michigan, 79 degrees. The wind will be about 7, maybe close to 10 miles per hour at times. And then we go all the way down here to North Ave Beach in Chicago, 76 degrees. Not a bad day outside today. The thing is, you may not be thinking about swimming because the water temperature is 56 degrees. So I think the air is nice enough, Greg, that there's no need to swim today.
I'm with you on that, Jake. It's almost like there's going to be a squall line that it's going to be hard to avoid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, you know, stretching from northeast to south.
Yeah.
But plus some individual cells, which we've been watching already today. So I'm going to get you into that. Talk about the new watch that has now been issued for parts of the south. So we have a severe thunderstorm watch in Alabama and Georgia, and that goes right up to where we have the tornado watch in Tennessee. This goes until 7 o'clock. The severe thunderstorm watch goes until 7 o'clock. And this area already has had a few thunderstorms in northern Alabama. There will be more, which is why it's been issued already. We're watching for this zone right up here to bring with it winds in excess of 60 miles per hour. That warning's in effect for you right along I-65. Watching that cell there. This is just south of Nashville. You see that coming through the south side of town. Not even town, but like south side of Middle Tennessee. And it's been moving east at a pretty good clip. We've been watching this all the way since back near Memphis. This is moving at about 40 to 50 miles per hour. Columbia's in it, Franklin, Spring Hill. This goes until 11 o'clock local time. And then we jump up here to this other cell, which is now into eastern Tennessee, Elk Valley, La Follette, and Oneida. This storm is under warning until 12:15 local time. Winds in excess of 60 miles per hour. We jump up into Kentucky, Georgetown, Paris, Kentucky. This one has tornado possible. So this is underneath where we have that more general broad scale mid-level circulation across this area. So there's a little more turning of the winds, keeping an eye on those cells up there. They're all pretty quick moving. And there's plenty of instability to feed into our thunderstorms here. And these thunderstorms are tapping into that and building up pretty quickly. We'll be keeping an eye on this right through the afternoon and evening.